Have you guys looked at the TikToks of these people that are like
Yes.
day in the life of like a Google engineer or day in the life?
They work for 30 minutes and then they're like 4 hours at the gym.
They don't work.
They don't work. They're literally smoking weed and playing video games.
And everyone knows it too.
They're playing cats.
Managers know it.
Talking about it. Yeah.
Managers know it. Senior VPs know it. The CEOs know it. This is my point. People just don't know how to manage it. It's a real.
I figured out
it's a real disequilibrium in the workforce because the way you managed it before is everyone would show up to work or they wouldn't. If someone's not in the office, they're not working, they get fired. Now what do you do?
Period.
You know, and no one wants to be monitored. No one wants to manage keystrokes through a friggin' remote computer and figure out how much you're typing.
Actually, it's interesting you mentioned
that's what you do, JCal, to your employees?
No. There are people doing that. Call centers actually do that. So call centers and sales teams, they have monitoring software.
Customer service and call centers, totally.
Yes.
Salespeople, you can totally track productivity. I'm talking about creators, producers, right? Like, yeah.
I actually have come up with some strategies for this. So we have a lot of writers doing newsletters and stuff like that. And so what we did was we created a block in the afternoon we've been testing where 3 writers will get together in a pod and they work on a newsletter together. So instead of 3 writers writing 3 different newsletters, you have 3 writers collaborate on 3 different newsletters. They do one for 2 hours, one for 2 hours, one for 90 minutes, one for 90 minutes.
And then a total of 3 people read the newsletters?
Well, it's doing $4 or $5 million in advertising. It's hundreds of thousands of people a day. But okay. But anyway, the point is, I didn't mention the name of the company. There's no plug in here, but by putting people into a Zoom, you put people in a Zoom or a huddle on Slack, which is like an audio only, and then they have to deliver work to each other. It's kind of how developers work or sales teams work with leads. And then in things like
pair programming, like pair programming.
It's like peer programming, exactly. And then and it also makes people less lonely and it builds social fabric. So there are techniques that are emerging. The other one I've looked at is I tell anybody if you're doing any type of knowledge work, you need to create a Notion or a Coda page, depending on what you use, and update us on that, and then send it to the group chat, to the general channel. Hey, I was working on the strategy for this. So when people say they're working on strategy, I have them document it, and I say share with us the Google Doc, and I use the Amazon 6-page, philosophy of a write first culture. And now people have to write it down. So I've been teaching people how to write, use Grammarly or Hemingway app to be better writers. And then what you can do is, as a manager, you can just look at your Notion or your Coda and see the change log. And when I see people in a change log and I see they made no commits, I'm like, what is this person doing? They said they did all the strategy stuff. Where is it? Where is the strategy stuff? Write it down. So if you switch to a write first culture and then train people how to write and become more confident writers, all that knowledge gets captured on your knowledge base and you can actually see people getting done. It's not perfect, but I think it's actually intellectually better than being in an office if you know how to do it. Because in an office, people are also performative. They're doing like bullshit meetings. They're pretending they're working. They're actually reading the news or whatever. So Sachs, what are you doing to monitor your employees covertly and keep them productive?
We don't need to monitor our employees that way because we're a small team and they're highly motivated. But look, it is an issue. I think where work from home is beneficial is on the hiring side, right? It's so much easier to hire for a job when your potential pool is anyone in the world. You're not just geographically limited to the city in which your office is. So that was the temptation for all these companies to go remote, is it made hiring so much easier. But there's no question that it makes management much harder and scaling the company much harder and building culture much harder. And so there's some real trade-offs there. I don't think companies have totally wrapped their heads around it. But look, in addition to productivity, there's one other aspect of this economy that I think is really broken. So the Chamber of Commerce says that 3.25 million fewer Americans are working today than they were in February of 2020. So basically, if you go back to the month before COVID, we had over 3 million more Americans in jobs than we do today. And yet the unemployment rate is still in the 3% range. And the reason is because that if somebody drops out of the labor force and isn't looking for work, they don't get counted in the unemployment rate. So we do have, if you define unemployment as a large number of people who aren't working, we have a huge unemployment problem. But the problem is they're not counted because they're supposedly not looking for work. So I don't think this economy is that healthy. And I think that there's a lot of distortions that have been created by government over the last couple of years.
The job data is suspect, is what you're saying, right? Like labor participation is down.
All this data, the data is suspect. The labels are suspect. I mean, like we talked about, all of a sudden we can't know what a recession is.